It has become apparent that a lot of the policy and legislation are rooted in colonialistic ideologies, and it's time that we as a society begin to unravel all of those roots that have controlled our people for such a long time. The Indian Act is the only act that identifies a group or an ethnic background. The Indian Act is racist to begin with, and yet we perpetuate it in our society. And Canada, as a state, continues to perpetuate this idea that a people, the first inhabitants of this continent, need to be controlled, and in the words of the Indian Act, civilized. And how can we live in a society that condones such legislation? How can we live with ourselves? So we look at this as we live in this society confronted with racism, and it's embedded in our health systems, our educational systems, our justice systems, and in policing, and even in the economic opportunities that exist. Very little room is afforded to Indigenous people because they want to keep Indigenous people marginalized. They want to keep our people poor. And I've said before that if you can keep a people poor, you can control them. And that's the system that exists. When our people had free access to the resources of this land for millenniums upon millennium, and yet we are now on the margins of society, simply asking what is rightfully ours, simply asking for our treaty rights. But those rights have never been honored. Those treaties have been breached. And we live in a society, and we live with a state that has not shown themselves to be honorable. And those times are changing. I think that there's a generation coming up that does have a conscience, that have ethics. A residential school is the biggest mistake that was devised by the government from day one. And we're still living with the repercussions of that regime. But I think that our people are finally healing. There comes a point in time where we stop being victims. And today we live and we begin to thrive instead of just merely surviving. And that time is coming. The generation that we have before us will not live with the impacts of the residential school system. The gifting that they have will change our First Nations. A paradigm shift is occurring, and I look forward to seeing the day when our people are no longer marginalized, but we are front and center of what happens in this nation. And I think that our sovereignty, our governance systems are a beginning of that. We're taking control instead of being controlled. One of my chiefs said in a meeting, there's only one way we can end racism: by taking control. The system is racist, and there's only one way you can eliminate that: by taking control of these systems in health, in education, policing, justice, economic development. And I think that we are small in number, but it does not matter. It's not how many people we have, it's the spirit, in which we enter the next generation. And this is the 7th generation. And I'm looking forward to the future for First Nation people. Egusani, kinanaskabit now.